All right, while Tim is preparing to join us, we want to get started so that we start and end on time. Thank you for joining us for another Wednesday Grab and Go Growth Tactics session. We appreciate you taking a half an hour out of your very busy day to grab some lunch and grab some tactics with us. My name is Jim Wilcox. I am the owner of a Sandler Performance Center located in Fort Wayne, Indiana and South Bend, Indiana. We cover the great state of Indiana and elsewhere. So we are working with sales professionals and business owners across this great state and across this great country. My colleague to the right of me, Mr. John Vanderslice, sends his regards to everyone. He is not able to attend today. He will be back next week. And then hopefully we'll get Tim back here. He's having some internet issues. And hopefully
I'm back.
Hey, Tim's back. Tim, you want to introduce
Ta-da!
yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Sorry about that, everybody. I'm having a little bit of internet connectivity problems, so I've dialed in. But I am Tim Barry. I own the Sandler franchise, Sandler Performance Center in the great state of Texas, Fort Worth specifically. And happy to be here as always. This is just a highlight of the week. Jim, John, and I have a great time delivering some good content and good takeaways for you each week. And looking forward to this one in particular. This is a doozy.
There we go. So, all right, today we're going to talk about rules. Tim, you're going to have to mute your computer, my friend. We're going to talk about rules of the sales game. So in chat, I want you guys to get your chat fingers warmed up. If you're new to this call, we'd like you to engage. So please participate in the chat. What are, or how do you set the rules for a sales call? How do you set them with a prospect? Now, there are some Sandler folks on this call, so I'm going to ask you to hold back because you probably know what the topic is today. But if you're new to us, how do you go about setting the rules of the sales call with the prospect so that they're on the same page as you as to what to do or what not to do? Please type that in chat. And if you don't do it, just simply say, no idea. If you do it, let me know how you do it. Type that into chat now. Tim, think back pre-Sandler, right? In our training and knowing what we do, how would you go about doing that? You still with us, Tim? So when I think back pre-Sandler and I look at setting the rules of the game, I never did. I was never able to properly set the rules for the call, never properly able to set the rules for the engagement. I simply went in with my personality. To Amy's comment, I would loosely review the agenda, and then I would leverage my personality and my ability to be in the moment to work to push the call forward. Tim, are you back with us?
Yeah, I'm back.
So thinking pre-Sandler, how would you go about, if you did at all, how would you go about setting the rules for the sales call?
Holy smokes. Yeah, way back in the day, holy smokes, I got invited into an office to meet with a prospect. So, I was usually at their mercy at that time. And so I really didn't set a lot of rules. I would have things that I wanted to talk about, but yeah, it was almost like being, at the parent teacher conference. The prospect was the teacher sitting in the big desk, and then I, as the parent, would be sitting in the little one. So it was very uneven balance in long ago.
Yeah, exactly. So here's another question, because I only see one or two comments in the chat. Should we set rules for a sales call with the prospective client? Should we be setting rules that they agree to? So answer me that in chat. Paul, I love your comment. Thank you. You're welcome to go in with my personality. I don't know how it would be coming from you, but you're welcome to use it. So, I never I never really knew whether I could do that, whether I could set the rules, because I always felt like this. I always felt like I was deferential to the prospect, that they had the power and I really didn't. And so I would do whatever I could to work to move the sale forward, but I always found myself kind of submissive or deferential to the prospect. And so, Tim, as you think about this slide, what happens when the buyer's in control?
Oh boy. Yeah. I mean, it's when the buyer's in control, you really are you as the salesperson are you're reacting to everything. And, there's not really what I would imagine a balanced relationship at that point. So they're gonna probably run you ragged on what's your price, what's the best deal that you can give me, this, that, and whatever. And as the salesperson who doesn't have any control in that relationship, in that unbalanced relationship, we get steamrolled. And unfortunately, that's where you become a commodity, because if it's only about price, you get eaten alive.
Yeah. So I'm not sure the name, but MM in chat says, I've always come in with agenda, and before the end of the call, ask for buy-in with the recommended products. Always try to close the deal. And that was me, certainly me. And I would fancy myself a pretty good sales professional prior to what we do now. Always be closing, right? I mean, we've heard that term for a long time, and that was always me, always working to close. The challenge with that is that, man, that takes a lot of energy. It really takes a lot of energy working to close. And so rather than do that, I want to set up a scenario where we mutually agree to each step and we take them on a journey that leads to the natural agreement of doing business together. Certainly there are times when we have to close the deal, but I'll tell you, by leveraging what we call the upfront contract, and we'll introduce that in a second, that sets the stage for getting to that place where the sale naturally happens. Now, with the buyer being in control, the big thing that we want to do is create balance or make the relationship equitable. So, rhetorical question for the audience is, what happens when there's no equity in the relationship? And Tim, I'll ask that directly to you. Feel free to chime in chat. What happens when there's no equity in the relationship?
Yeah, it's a good question. When there's no equity in a relationship, it's very one-sided. Mm-hmm. I would even go so far as to say it's not really a relationship at all. It's almost like a master and a servant or whatever. And so, yeah, when you don't have equity in that relationship, you're going to go and be super reactive to everything. In the sales world, you're probably going to go into convince mode and rely on that amazing personality and witty banter and charm to talk your way into it, or edu-sell, which people love to do as well, which is all the same thing that every other salesperson on the planet is going to do. So the real trap is you'll never gain equity if you sound like every other salesperson that there is.
Well, I think you said two things in there that stood out to me. Edu-sell, neither of us are big fans of spilling our candy in the lobby, right? Which is a Sandler term for giving away all of our intellectual property or free consulting, right? We're not fans of that. And then you mentioned trying to gain equity in the relationship. If I don't start out with equity, boy, it's really difficult to gain it along the way. Can I do it? Absolutely can do it, right? But it takes less time to get there if I start out that way. So some other things that happen when there's not equity in the relationship, I may give unilateral concessions. I may fear asking questions. I may fear talking about budget or decision. I may fear going to that next step because of uncertainty and whatnot. So I want to create equity in the relationship as soon as possible. And that's part of what we're talking about today. So what exactly are the rules that you would like the prospect to agree to? How would you write them? So those of you without Sandler background, how would you write the rules of the game? What would you want the prospect to agree to? Throw those into chat. And Tim, I'll ask you from a pre-Sandler perspective, right? Put yourself back in the shoes of when you didn't know the things you know today. What would you want the prospect to agree to?
Oh, heck, that's easy. I want to know that they are willing and able to spend money with me, that they like my solutions, that they're prepared to make the decision, in a reasonable time frame.
Oh, he went out. Tim, I think we lost you.
Pre-Sandler I would be dying for those types of things.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I would want somebody to agree to the time that they committed to, but here's the challenge, right? The challenge is I may want all those things, but what did you do if you were meeting with me and we had 30 minutes on the books and I said, Tim, I appreciate you showing up, but man, the place is burning down around me. I got about 10 minutes. Go for it.
Old me would have been like, oh, okay, all right, well, there's a lot of good stuff you're going to miss, but... And then
here's my best 10 minutes, right?
I'd start vomiting information as quickly as I could in 9.5 minutes and then go for the close.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So when we talk about, writing the rules of the game up front, right? At the beginning, we talk about the upfront contract. And the upfront contract is a mutual agreement. And I underline that for a reason. It is a mutual agreement. And in order for it to be mutual, there's got to be a dialogue that happens here. And that dialogue occurs on the purpose of the meeting. Why are we getting together? The time of the meeting, the agenda of the meeting, specifically their agenda first, right? Because it's about the prospect first always. My agenda, if it makes sense to weave it in, and then the outcome. Now, I want to make sure that we address these things early in the relationship and often throughout the relationship. And so whether I'm making a cold call to set an appointment or this is our first, second, or fifth meeting, I'm going to review the upfront contract. And if I do that every time, it guarantees that I get to one of the following outcomes. And Tim, do you want to take a minute and talk about some of the outcomes that we want to get to?
Sure.
Uh-oh. Tim, we're losing you. So Tim, we're losing you periodically.
I'm sorry about that.
That's all right. All right. Try it one more time.
Really, there's three outcomes, and the three outcomes are a definitive no, and no is okay. We have to get comfortable with the fact that if someone says no, this isn't going to work, then that's fine. Then you can move on. The second outcome is yes, and those are the three magic letters we love to hear most as salespeople, of course. Mm-hmm. But there's a third one, and this was the one that many times we discount as an outcome. It's a clear next steps, a clear future for what's to come. So there's times when you're going to go through your meeting and not have a positive yes or no, or maybe there's more information that needs to be exchanged, or you discover that there's other decision makers that have to be involved. Mm-hmm. And so the third outcome is that you've got an agenda set.
So I'll pick up where Tim left off.
Is it going to happen? How much more is it going to be? So
yep.
Those are the things those are the three components of the outcome.
There you go. Yeah. So from an outcome perspective, regardless of the outcome, we're going to talk about it, right? So if it's a no, we're going to have it, just let it be a no. And I'd rather understand a no and move on than chase something that's never going to happen, because that's wasting time. If it's a yes, then let's get to the next step of that yes. Let's get the PO signed, the contract signed, whatever your world is, let's get to it. And if it's clear future, then let's talk about that clear future and let's set the agenda for that clear future. And so this is how we set the rules of the game. This is how we lead the dance while letting our partner, the prospect, feel like they're leading it. And it's the dialogue that occurs here that helps us get to that. So when we think about that dialogue, you know, Tim, how do we create that? How do we ensure that we keep on that dialogue and not make it just me telling you what's going to happen from a time agenda and outcome perspective? I think we lost Tim again.
No, I'm back.
Oh,
all right.
There you are.
Yeah, I think, I think there's a typical rule that professional salespeople will handle, and it's that they're talking 30% of the time, they're listening 70% of the time. And I think, that's how you can use that as a good benchmark for, is this a dialogue, or are you explaining or trying to convince the person to go through this? You can make your upfront contract extremely, you can make it very conversational, and it really shouldn't be robotic. You need buy-in from your prospect. And so that's how you go about that. You make it a conversation, not, hey, I have to check this box.
Absolutely. Absolutely, 100%. And so it's imperative, and I can't stress it enough, so I'll do it again. It's imperative that we have the dialogue about purpose of the meeting, time, agenda, and outcome. And so when we do that, a couple of things happen. Number one, we create equal business stature. I get rid of that first picture I showed where I feel deferential to the prospect. Because at the end of the day, it's all about creating equity, right? It's all about creating equity in the relationship. And that is specifically what we refer to as equal business stature. If I can do that, then a couple of things happen. Number one, a strong upfront contract gives us the ability to deal with our biggest fears. So, Tim, what do I mean by that? What do we mean by I can address my big fears?
Yeah, a lot of people have different fears in their conversations with prospects. A lot of people will struggle with having conversations about money. A lot of people will struggle with asking for the outcome. Is this a no? Is this a yes? Or is this, do we need to further this forward? And dealing with your biggest fears up front, you can just say it outright up front and address the 800-pound gorilla in the room.
Yep.
And it takes the fear out of it. It does create a different dynamic with your prospect, because you're willing to be vulnerable about what you actually fear.
Yes, exactly. And we'll give, before the end of this call, we'll give a practical example. We'll do a little role play on what this actually sounds like. Second thing is that a strong upfront contract guarantees that we're not going to get interrupted. I would say it can guarantee that there's no interruptions during the call. So if it's something I need, I can put it in there. Same thing with the first rule. If there's a fear I have and I need to deal with it, I can leverage, this concept of the upfront contract to address it. If I sense that interruptions are going to be a problem, for instance, I walk into a manufacturing company and, we've gotten 3 interruptions before we even sit down and talk together, I may say, hey, Tim, before we get started, right, I want to make sure that we have a solid 30 minutes together. I've shut my phone off. Are you able to do the same thing? 9 times out of 10, the person will say, hey, no problem. It's on silent, right? Not going to get interrupted. Great. So I can be more firm if I need to, or I can simply address it in that manner. So it can guarantee that I remove interruptions. The other thing is that it guarantees that, and even requires that a decision is made at each intermediate step. Where we get into trouble is if we wimp out on the upfront contract. But if we've talked through time, agenda, and outcome, and Tim and I have agreed on an outcome, it requires that we get to it, right? And if there's an objection there, I'll know it right away and I'll have the ability to address it. What I don't want is, for example, Tim saying, hey, Jim, this meeting has been amazing. It sounds great. Why don't we get together in 3 or 4 weeks and maybe we can move it forward? I want something more concrete than that at every step. And so this type of thing happens when I create equal business stature up front. So when do we set an upfront contract? Tim, when's a good time to set an upfront contract?
Upfront contract, there's almost every time you create a dialogue or begin a dialogue with someone, set your upfront contract, know what you're getting into, what's the purpose, time, agenda, outcome. After your meeting is over, you want to revisit and set a new upfront contract. We're either not moving forward, we're moving forward, or there's clear next steps. When you're setting appointments, have an upfront contract. Almost every conversation that you have could and should be. The top performers are using upfront contract constantly.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So beginning, just to recap, beginning of any call, the end of any call, the beginning of the next call, and then any time, and I'll add this in, anytime something changes, I have the right and I actually have the responsibility to reset the upfront contract. Otherwise, prospect's now in control and I'm just along for the ride. And so those are the times when we should set it. So let's talk a little bit about what this sounds like. And Tim, I'd like to do, in the next 6-7 minutes that we have together, I'd like to do 2 role plays so we can talk about setting the ground rules for the sales call. And I want to start the first one as just simply a prospecting call where we don't know each other. Okay. And so do you want to be the sales pro and I'll be the prospect?
You be the sales pro on the first one. So.
Okay. All right. So I'm calling Tim. He doesn't know me. Ring, ring.
Yeah, this is Tim.
Tim Barry?
Yeah.
Jim Wilcox. Name doesn't mean a thing to you, does it?
No, I'm sorry, man. Doesn't.
Didn't think so. Tim, listen, I'm making a prospecting call. It's your lucky day, I guess. Maybe we could do this. How about I give you maybe 30 seconds, high-level flyover of the reason for my call. At the end of that time, you're more than welcome to hang up on me gently, or if there's a further dialogue to be had, we can schedule it on our calendars if that's the right thing to do. Is that, you open-minded to that, Tim?
Yeah, that's fine. 30 seconds sounds good.
All right. So timeout, auto role play.
Yep.
So in that dialogue between us, we covered very briefly time, a very general agenda. Let me give you a high level flyover and then an outcome. You're welcome to hang up or we'll schedule extra time. The idea there is 2 things. 1, I've set some ground rules for the call. Number 2, I've gotten Tim's buy-in as to what's going to happen. All of us have taken a cold call where the salesperson on the other end is really hell-bent on getting their message to you regardless of what you're saying back to them. They're just reading from a script, or they're intent on really just delivering a message regardless of what you say, do, or think. And so that's one example. The next one I want it to be, so let's pretend that cold call was successful. We've identified that there's a reason to sit down for a half an hour together. And so we'll pick it up from there. So which role are you playing here, Tim?
Let's just keep it. We'll keep it. I'll still be prospect.
Perfect. So let's pretend we show up on Zoom together, even though I can't see you. We'll just pretend we're here and you lead by saying, hey, Jim, good to see you. So go.
Yeah. Hey, Jim, good to see you.
Hey, Tim, good to see you too. Appreciate you hopping on this Zoom call.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So things are going well in your world?
Yeah. You know what? It's busy as can be, but it's a nice problem to have. First world problems for sure.
Excellent. Excellent. I feel the same way. So Tim, if you don't mind, I'd like to take a second and kind of maybe set the table for this call. And if you're agreeable to it, then I think we can have a very productive call. Um, you know, first of all, are you still good for 30 minutes that we had set aside for this?
Sure am.
Awesome. Excellent. Now, as you think about the 30 minutes together, is there anything specific that you want to cover? I know that I cold called you and you agreed to a call, but is there anything as you've thought about this, anything you want to make sure that we cover?
Yeah, my salespeople keep dropping price all the time. That's their go-to. And
Okay.
it's frustrating. It's really frustrating. And I don't know. I can't remember if we talked about that when you cold called me last week.
Okay. Well, you mentioned price, selling through price as a challenge. Is there anything else related to that we should discuss?
Yeah, I think the second part is maybe the pipeline. Their pipelines are inconsistent, and so
when you say inconsistent, from one to the other, or they're using different pipelines?
no, it's all the same pipeline. But 1 month they'll hit a home run, the next minute they'll strike out, and not even have a person on base. So
okay,
it's
right.
Kind of boom bust.
All right. So I've got this pipeline conversation, and then I've got, they're dropping price, which I'm assuming is killing your margins or your profit.
Crushing
Anything else?
Those are the two real big ones.
Okay. So Tim, on my end, I'm probably going to have a lot of questions for you, and I'm probably going to start with the whole price thing. As we maneuver through this dialogue, as if you get a sense that this is not a good conversation, I'm not a good fit, we're not a good fit, are you comfortable kind of calling that out?
Absolutely.
All right, excellent. And I'm big on the fact that we shouldn't waste time together. If it's productive, we'll keep talking. If not, then we should call it out. And I'm committed to the degree that, Tim, if I don't think I can help you, I'll probably bring it up. So if you're comfortable with that, then what I'd like to do is, just ask that at the end of this call, we make that decision that we talked about, either A, not a fit, or B, we have a clear next step. Are you comfortable with this approach?
Yeah, no, I think that.
Awesome. Excellent. So, Tim, I'd like to get started with a couple questions and I'll time out there. So I would take it from that approach, and that would be my upfront contract for setting the rules of the game of the call. Now, that dialogue could have been shorter or longer depending on the dialogue that we had. But at the end of the day, that tool is our best weapon for setting the ground rules of the game for any sales call that we're on. Tim, are you still there with a minute to go?
Yep, I sure am. So the one final thought on my end is that there's nothing more satisfying to listen to yourself talk about what you want to talk about. And so the mindset of upfront contract is wonderful because it has the salesperson put the prospect's agenda first.
Yeah.
And that's when people tend to make determinations whether they like you or not. If you sit there as a salesperson yapping and they don't get a word in because you're busy talking about what you want to talk about, you're going to break the bond of trust. And if you get them talking about what they want to talk about, they're going to think you're great. And so it's just kind of a secondary benefit of having a strong upfront contract.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Do us a favor as we're wrapping this up, type in chat one takeaway you got from this content, this session today. Steve Phones chimed in and said, hey, great content. I believe expectations are planned disappointments as to strong agreements. And I couldn't agree more, Steve. If I go into the call with strong expectations and they're not communicated, if we haven't had a dialogue on it, I'm potentially setting myself up for failure. Certainly successes will come, but I want to minimize the failure, the rejection, et cetera, by having an open dialogue with a prospect as to what will and what won't happen. And if we can get there, there's some other things that happen. We're creating good bonding and rapport. right? We're leading the dance, though they feel like they're leading it. So we're moving in sync. And so a lot of things are happening there. Do me a favor, type in one takeaway, and we are going to wrap this session up. We thank everybody for attending, and we'll see you next week on our next Grab and Go Growth Tactics webinar.
Thanks everybody.
Everyone. Yeah. Throw a comment in there. There you go. Paul just typed in, let them tell you what they need before you tell them what you can do. Paul,
Amen.
I'm going to steal that quote. That is excellent. That is really excellent. 100%. And most salespeople have that 100% backwards. We show up and tell them all they can do or all that we can do, and they don't, they don't communicate to us what their needs are. So that's a great comment. Anybody needs any help with this, feel free to reach out to us. Our emails are on the board here. You guys have a wonderful day. We'll talk to you soon.